Okay, here's a version of It Is Well With My Soul, When Peace Like a River. Electric guitar parts. I'm going for the kind of arpeggio with some delay on, so there's about 3 or 4 repeats there. And I'm looking to stay, at the moment, in the top, this kind of range around the guitar to be kind of consistent. And looking to pick out the notes of the arpeggios and be able to play either one chord that rings out, maybe with some volume swells, or arpeggiating out. There's a version online that is quite slow. If I just turn off the delay, here's a bit of the idea of how the acoustic kind of part. When okay, so quite slow, that kind of thing. So in that context, we've got some things we're going to play again, like there's a C chord. You just concentrate on the top 3 strings. If here's a G chord, just concentrate on those top 3 strings, or a G chord like that, a triangle kind of shape, which is like your D chord down the bottom, moved up to the 7th and the 8th fret. So it could be like this, C, C, G, A minor, second line, R3, D, G. So what I did then was G2, so instead of there would be a G like the top of that, instead of the 3rd there I've got the 2nd. That kind of sounds. Now then to a G7, over F, I'm seeing a G9 kind of like that with the 2nd in there, so instead of having the, I'm dropping to seeing as it, again I'm just seeing that like a G7 bar chord there and just making that. That's how I come up with that. Then it goes on, C over E. Sorry, where was I? It is well, it is well with my soul. It is C on E, F2, G, C, G, C sus, to C. Okay, so that's C on E. To F, now there would be F, that would work, but I like just the F2 to C to G, and then it, on the chart has C to C sus to C, but I think it works nicer just to go to C sus. So there's the C there. That C sus is the same voicing as the F2. It depends which bass note you have, those same notes work. So there is the C, so there's C sus, back to C. Now, depending on what your band leader wants, there's an option of going at the chorus just to a C chord for the first chord, or I really like the F there instead. No, so again I might go for an F2 to G. G2 as well. And it stays there. And back to a C. Or even could work there. So F2. It is well with my soul, with my soul. That could work. It is well, well. Got to experiment because I haven't figured out all these exactly, but the F at bar 11. C and then to a G. So maybe it might work better. So they're all just versions of those inversions, and maybe shifting around the third, dropping it to the second. And again, you just need to practice those shapes, and they start to become really familiar. If it's just taking the top 3 strings of that bar chord, so see the root note on the high E string, or here's the F chord and there's an F2 chord. So your root note here is on the G string, and if you've got like that G or G sus, your root note's on the B string, so G or then an A minor. So all of those options will give you stuff. The other part that you can do is not to play the arpeggios, but to go for some more power chordy, grunty stuff. That simply can be just the bottom 2 notes, although that can start to sound a bit not as sophisticated. So here's a couple of other options. When you go to the F chord, you can play an F power chord, but don't play it on the bottom 3 strings, play it on the middle 3 strings. F at the 3rd fret on the D string, C at the 5th fret on the G string, and F at the 6th fret on the B string. Even if you put the C underneath that, it kind of has a real gutsy kind of sound with that 5th in the bass. You'll have the bass player playing down the other octave, so the band won't sound like it's got a C in the bass. And that gives you plenty of crunch. It's playing those middle 4 strings. Just playing with the pickup selector to find what's got enough crunch on it without it sounding too distorted or breaking up too much. I had it on the position 4 for those ones. You know, just experiment and come up with a good option, listening for how much treble, bass and mids that you want, and that seems to blend well with the band and the sounds you've got working. So here's the F. Then it's consistent to kind of just move everything up for a G. I'm in a big, might also work. That's a lot of the, just the top 4 strings there. Here's pretty much that. In fact, it's exactly that. It's got a bit more tops on the higher strings. Choose which one works for you. Again, then G, and then you might choose this version of the C. So that's C, G and C with a G underneath it, which gives it that crunchiness. A C add 9 might also be another option there. So that's just C, G, D, C. So it is well. Either of those are good options. It is well. It is well. My soul. And then I'd go again to the C sus. Yeah, that could work in the context of that full chord. Just experiment with which ones of those you like, which one feels good, comfortable. All of those shapes are written out in that booklet that I've given out to most of you guys, but ask for some more diagrams to be sent if that's helpful. Cheers.